Good evening. It's Sunday evening here. I believe it's the 8th of November. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been doing the last approximately 8 months. I've been, because people ask me all the time. And so I decided this evening I'd do a little talk about it. I'm at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, which is about a 2-hour drive from San Francisco, 100 miles north in Northern California, in a lovely monastery, a few hundred acres of beautiful land. And oak trees and a variety of shrubs and plants and lots of flowers and some pine and lots of fruit trees, acres of grapes, and an organic farm. So I've been in a very, very safe place and under lockdown. So starting about 3/4 of a year ago, no one could come in and no one could go out. We just really locked down. And of course the reasons are obvious. There's a couple of hundred people or so here. Many are elderly. Hard for me to think of myself in that category, but I guess I am. And so we want to be extra careful because we're an enclosed community, so if one person gets, sick, a lot of people do. Just like kids in school, you get a few kids that get a flu and then everybody has it pretty soon, or a cold. So, but what's it like being all secluded like this? I applied one time to take a bike ride out because there's a mechanism for doing things that are important, like going to a doctor visit, and you can apply to take leave for a few hours. And then you have to agree to come back, wash your clothes, take a shower, and all sorts of things. If you leave for more than a couple of hours, then you have to go into seclusion here on the property for 2 weeks before you can come in contact with everyone again. So today I'll talk a little bit about, being here, what it's been like. So the short story is that it's been really great, because I'm doing what I like to do. I usually seclude myself anyway, and now I really have an excuse. Like I say, I wanted to get out once because behind this property is this reservoir in incredible nature. And it's in the summer it fills up, and it's not real big, it's a small reservoir. And it's loaded with all sorts of, it's perfectly clear, turquoise water. That's just loaded with plant life, very rare species also that you don't find anywhere else. If you look beneath the water like I do when I swim, it's got every kind of colored grass and weed and stuff growing on the bottom. Is just loaded with chlorophyll and other kinds of nutrients. That's why the fish are so healthy. So I always drink lots of the water when I swim there. It's great. One of the teachers here, after he found out I'd been drinking it, this was before the lockdown, he said that he took some of the sample of the water and put it under a microscope, and it had every kind of bacteria and harmful disease in it you can imagine. Anyway, did me a lot of good. But I drank the Ganges water in Varanasi, same way, to prove Yogananda's point that the Ganges is unpollutable, and I didn't get sick. So we've been in lockdown, and so when summer came, I thought the lockdown would be over, but it wasn't. So I applied to take my bicycle and ride to the reservoir, about a half-hour ride, and go for a swim and come back. But unfortunately, the administration didn't think it was important enough, so I was denied. So aside from missing my swim in the reservoir, I've been doing really good. I get up 3:40 with everybody else and do the morning prayers for an hour or so. Then I go to sleep again for an hour and a half. And then I begin a day of study and meditation, and then an incredible lunch with much of the food grown here on the property. We just completed summer, and for the entire summer was all organic plums and peaches and pears and lots and lots of grapes, apples. For veggies, spinach and kale. And there's wild grasses here that the volunteers and nuns have been picking often. We have that for lunch too, these wild weeds that are a little slippery. They taste exactly like spinach, but they're slippery. I don't know what they are. But I've been eating lots of that. The monastery has been like a feat of organization as far as how it's been functioning under lockdown. The ceremonies have been going on just as they would any other time, but to keep in tune with the government guidelines, we had to keep everybody 6 feet apart, and in order to do that, we had to divide up, add a couple of additional halls so that instead of everybody being in the main Guanyin Hall, where the Great Compassion Hall is what I call it, but other people know it as the Buddha Hall, altogether we've had to divide everyone up, and that part is one of the things that I have not enjoyed very much, because I like being in the Buddha Hall with all the people doing the ceremonies. But aside from that, which is actually not, one of the things I really miss, is doing the pujas together, all the prayers together. Everything has been a feat of organization. There's food brought in that we need. If anybody needs medicine, they can put an order in at the main office, and people will bring it in once a day. There's runs for food and medicines. The smaller ceremonies that aren't as much attended can be attended in the Buddha Hall. So once a day there's a Great Compassion prayer for an hour and 15 minutes that I attend. And it's just incredible. And that's in the Buddha Hall. And the nuns many of the nuns have just world-class operatic voices. So I don't know the Chinese, but I go just to listen, and I recite my own mantras while standing and for the ceremony and bowing. Lots of bowing in that particular ceremony, alternate bowing. Between the nuns' side, this hall is divided between nuns and monks and male and female lay people. Recently, the monastery has started Zoom teachings. Before the lockdown, there was a teaching every single evening. But once lockdown started, the teachings stopped because we couldn't all gather in one hall. Now they've resumed again online. So you can go to the CTTB website and find out when the teachings are, City of 10,000 Buddha's website, and find out when the teachings are. They aren't every night like they were, but there are teachings several hours a week that anyone can go to. One of the things I really miss is all the kids. This property has a high school, a secondary school, junior high school, and a kindergarten, and 4 boys and 1 for girls. Property is divided roughly in half, with the women's side having their schools and the men's side having their schools. But there's no kids running around. That's probably what I miss the most, is the kids. The kids are just great. We always have 100 or so on the men's side and probably that much or more on the women's side. And they're running age from like 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 to, 18. And they graduate and they often get into the best of colleges because the schools here are so great. So that's something I really miss. My room is in what's called the Annex building, Annex 6. There's, I believe, 7 or 8 annex buildings. And my room is right opposite the junior high, or the high school, or the combined. And so I'd always hear the kids and see the kids and say hello to them. So that's kind of something that is very dear to me, that not seeing them around. But because I live mostly in my mind anyway, I've been taking advantage of the time for doing lots of meditation. My mornings begin, like I said, at 4. Officially at 4, I put out my water bowls and light my lamp, my butter lamp. I make a butter lamp and with ghee and burn that every morning, and put out my offering bowls of water and begin with a guru yoga for an hour or so, and then take a nap, and then about 5:30 resume everything again, or 6:30, and go on until 11 a.m. with various prayers and meditations and study. And then lunch is at between 11 and 12. And sometimes I eat at 11, sometimes I eat at 12. After everybody's done, I go in and there's a second round, and I go in for the second round. I enjoy eating at any time, basically, but I've been eating once a day now again for the last 3 years. I lived in this monastery for 7.5 years in the 1970s to early 80s, and this is where I started out in a big way, actually into the mother monastery, Gold Mountain, before this one for 3 years. So the habit of eating once a day, I started again while staying at a Dharma master's house in Los Angeles a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. And he still eats once a day. He's still a monk, and we were monks together here. Now he has his own place in Los Angeles. And so I noticed he was still eating once a day, and so I decided to give it a try again. And of course, it was very, very good for me. I like it. More time for meditation. But I eat a lot. I make all 3 meals into one. And then lots of butter tea, Tibetan tea, in between. When I was a monk, I didn't take anything but water after lunch until the next day. But now I kind of have a few cups of Tibetan tea, not as many as Tibetans do, because I know Tibetans that'll drink 50 cups of tea a day. I'm not that radical, but I have 2 or 3 big cups. Their cups are small, like 5 ounces, but mine is 16 ounce, nice big cup. So then in the evening, from after lunch, I kind of have my free time. I walk around and circumambulate sometimes. There's a cremation spot of my teacher here. I circumambulate that. Then basically I do whatever I want. I might bicycle ride around the property. I got a bicycle last year, or this year. And I love doing that. And the basketball court is empty, so a lot of times I do figure eights in the basketball court. It's a double basketball court, so it's got a lot of room for doing figure eights and stuff on my bicycle. So I try and get an hour of bicycle riding in every day. And that's great fun. And then yoga, of course. That I do sporadically, because if I'm bicycle riding an hour, then yoga, and then a lot of times I meditate standing. So it only so much energy. But I go on spurts when I'm doing the yoga for several months at a time, usually never less than an hour and a half each session. And I try and stay on the mat. I have a rule when I do yoga, I don't leave the mat for water or anything else, going to the bathroom or anything. And I superset my yoga, so I'm nonstop for an hour and a half. So I do my yoga. That's a real big treat. And then I take a nap at 4 to 5. I love my naps. I take the water bowls off the altar and clean the bowls and get them ready for the next day, and then I take a nap. This is something I've been doing basically all my life, taking a late afternoon nap. And as far as what's going on here, what it's like being in lockdown, it's been really great. And it's not just me. It seems like everybody that's here, the 100 or so of us, everybody's really enjoying it, being locked up. It keeps everybody out of trouble and getting distracted and, getting all caught up in like going shopping and stuff like that. Everything is brought to us. It's like the world coming to us, We don't have to go get coffee or food or anything. It all is brought in. So once a day, I look at the news for anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour, but sometimes usually the hour one is once a week, because the news is just so much repetition and it's a distraction. But when I see on the news, how, for example, in lockdown people in New York are doing, maybe in a small apartment at street, where one of those apartments where when you peek out the window, you see people's shoes walking. Now, one of those half underground and half above ground apartments. And I see people in, small places, big cities, and they're locked down. And my friends, I talk to them at least once a week in Nepal, and they're telling me, how terribly locked down they are. My friend told me the other day that there were 1,000 suicides in Kathmandu because of the lockdown, and countless people have died. Because Nepal, Kathmandu, is basically people don't have money, savings. So people are really hungry. They don't have the means that we have. So what I'm calling here lockdown is not lockdown like in New York or Kathmandu. It's like comparing one of the prisons like San Quentin or something with one of these things for the billionaires that go to their jail cells in these really luxurious prisons where everything is pretty much okay. So here being in lockdown is actually probably would be like the best therapy for anybody, the best spa in a way. So it's hardly lockdown. It's actually is good therapy, even for me, like who likes to be alone so much anyway. I'm enjoying it. It's like the first time in my life that I'm told to do what I like to do. And so in evening time, I do my meditation until 11 o'clock. And then usually I do it until 10, and then I have free time from 10 to 11. But usually it winds up I'm meditating until 11 anyway. Which for me, when I say meditation, it can be anything from circumambulating or reading a sutra or doing some kind of philosophical inquiry or something like that. Any kind of formal practice where I begin by lighting incense and I end by transferring a merit, I call meditation. So, for example, in the morning when I start at 4 and I end at 11, I begin with my offerings of, rituals of lighting lamps and putting out water and stuff like that, and sometimes flowers and so forth. And then I end by transferring the merit. So from 4 to 11 for me is what I call formal time. I don't get on the phone unless I know that's something important I'm supposed to tend to, some call or something. But generally I don't look at news, talk on the phone, check messages or anything like that because I want to make sure when I transfer the merit at the end of the morning that it's not like nonsense that I was involved in or even, what's not nonsense, like doing work around the property here. Like one of my favorite things to do here is clean the toilets, public toilets, because nobody wants to do it, so I figure that's a good thing for me to do. I did it when I was a monk, so I continue to do it now. But I usually don't consider it part of my ritual, so I save that for my free time during the day between 11 and 4 or 5 or so. And so the period from 4 to 11 is some form of Dharma practice. Generally, a couple of hours of meditation, some circumambulation of the monuments here, and then study, a couple of hours of study every day in the morning, and then an hour or two in the evenings too. And then practice and reflection and so forth. And sometimes I'll count yoga as part of the meditation, the formal time. The formal time in the evening is generally from 5 o'clock to 11 at night, or 10 at night. And so what I call formal is where I begin with a formal lighting of incense and I end with a formal transference of merit. So I try and make whatever is in between there meaningful. and not like cruising the net or something like that, which I do a little bit in my spare time, but it's not part of my formal time. So still, like as when I was a monk, there's probably 10 hours a day of formal time, where I try and be a little bit responsible for myself. And so then the other times, when I'm not, because there's 24 hours in a day, and I only sleep about 5 hours, and then maybe another hour nap, so 6 hours. So there's a few hours there, 8 or so, that I can do stuff. So I mow lawns and to get exercise, and plus it's fun. I used to like to do it when I was a kid. I still do. And then I write. I write a little bit. I just wrote a book on the master, what I thought his teachings were. It's 150 pages. I might publish it, I might not. And I wrote a 25-page one for the nuns because they asked me to. And so I like to write. So I'll spend intermittently, it's not every day. Sometimes it's every day for a spurt, for a couple or 3 hours of writing. But not always. And when I'm not writing, then I'll spend my time like something that's physical, like mowing the lawn is really good. Or using the weed whacker. The weed whacker keeps my wrists and everything strong. So that's what I've been doing. And it's been great. And every day, the food to look forward to is just totally amazing. So much thought goes into the meals. The nuns do much of the farming and the cooking and the serving of the food. And it's a buffet style every single day. And the food is all organic, except what's brought in from outside, and even that is usually organic. The only thing that has to be brought in is grains and stuff like we don't grow here, rice and condiments, sesame seeds, and so forth. But every day there's a very well thought out, balanced diet that gives you all the protein you need, all the fiber, all the vitamins and minerals and so forth. It's really, there's a lot of thought that goes into every single meal, and every day is different. So there's a big variety that's very well calculated for nutrition, because the monks here and the nuns all eat once a day. The volunteers eat 3 times if they want to. Not all do. But with that in mind, a lot of care and thought is given into each daily meal, each buffet. And often, at least once a week, there's just gourmet Chinese food. Every day is fantastic food, much better than you'd get in a good restaurant, but on certain days it's just out of this world. On holidays and on once or so a week, they get inspired and they make, spring rolls and dumplings and things like that. Momos, as the Tibetans call them, but they're a kind of a dumpling, and they're delicious. So eating really great. So that's what I've been doing here. And it's been, a wonderful lockdown. We're in pristine nature, as I mentioned. We're out in the country. The closest town is 2 miles away, and it probably only has a couple of thousand people. And we're about 30 miles below the giant redwoods, the famed Avenue of the Giants, where the trees are, some of them are over 2,000 years old. The giant sequoias, the redwoods. So that's it for anybody who's kind of curious about what I've been doing. What I've been thinking, I'll make the topic of another talk, but that's what, life has been like. So I hope, I hope that everybody, that we don't have to endure this pandemic much longer, because while I'm in, fine, and all the people here in lockdown are really well, I see that so many people in the world are suffering terribly by being in confined spaces, having not insufficient food to eat, or no food at all, and unable to go out and exercise or move around like they're accustomed to. And for all the people that are not trained to seclude themselves like monastics are, and like meditators are, and easily adapt, and who undergo such terrible, those who are not familiar with living a life of where they cannot go out and do things, and don't know how to discipline their mind in such a situation, who are suffering mental illness and literally going stir crazy. I certainly hope this pandemic ends soon and it's resolved so people can get back to their normal lives. In the meantime, this monastery and many monasteries are doing what they can to provide online guidance for people, meditation. A friend of mine has 6 hours a week, he's doing meditation teachings and ceremonies at his house, from his house in Santa Fe. He lives alone in the mountains. But he has many, many students that join him for prayers and teachings. And so for all those who are in lockdown, in not such good circumstances, I wish that the online classes that are available are taken advantage of. And the good forms of internet are used to help everyone to explore the nature of mind and learn how to be still and cope with the current crisis. There's much available, and it's increasing all the time as monasteries and schools adapt to the circumstances. So I hope that people take advantage of these resources, and I also hope that governments provide for those who are in need of food and clothing and things. So this is my wish for everybody, that they do the best they can to avail themselves of the opportunity that the internet offers during this time, and don't give up. Okay. Take care.